Jha is a specialist in certain areas, which you will come to discover. But when I came in here last year, when I took charge of the college, I was trying to get in touch with some of my old colleagues from here. And one of the first people I got in touch with was Dr. Priyaranjan Jha. And he very graciously agreed to come and talk to us when he comes to India next. And he is on a very tight schedule, in spite of which he has found time to come back here and share his knowledge with us. So from all of us, from the college, we want to say a big thank you to you. Thank you for your time. The second thing I want to say is that the topic that he is going to speak on is largely globalization. But the kind of wealth of information and the kind of insights that he is going to bring is something that all of us, irrespective of the discipline that we come from, we will all benefit from. So please pay attention to him. But now to do the formal introduction itself, I will ask Dr. Jha to say.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends. This is my pleasure to introduce today's guest to you. We have Professor Priyaranjan, popularly known as PRJ, the abbreviated form of his full name, with surname that is Priyaranjan Jha, with US, to talk about globalization. He is presently a professor in the Department of Economics in the University of California and a fellow with Chesifo Network since 2013. He is one of the brightest luminaries in the field of academics I have come across in this college during last 3 decades. Mr. Priyaranjan passed his class 10 exam in 1984 from Bihar board, securing the very first position in the state, for which he was awarded Dr. Rajendra Prasad Centenary Gold Medal. Then he joined Delhi Public School at R.K. Puram and was ranked All India #1 in the CBSE exams of class 12. Thereafter he joined Eco Honors in St. Stephen's College. Having topped in class 10 and 12, PRJ set new goals for himself. Getting first position in the University of Delhi, for which he was awarded Ranade Prize by the university, was not enough. In the very first year exams, those days 6 semester exams were not there, rather there were only 3 annual exams. PRJ broke all the previous records of Delhi University by securing 88% mark in his very first year exams. Dear friends, I must accept that St. Stephen's College has always been blessed with extraordinarily talented students. PRJ was one batch senior to me, and we had seniors like Pankaj Rag, setter of a new record of marks in history in the university exams for both his BA Honours and MA classes. Later he joined IAS. Pankaj Rag's classmate Prashant, who topped the list of successful candidates of IAS in 1988. University toppers in almost all the subjects, whether it was Vikram Balaswamy in history, or Nutan Bahadur in physics, or Sriram Chaulia in chemistry, or Pankaj Misra in Department of Sanskrit, and so on and so forth. The most striking virtue of PRJ lies in the fact that, unlike others, he was trained till class 12 in a school where all instructions were given in Hindi medium. After having gained training in Hindi medium for 10 years, switching over to English as a medium and carving a unique niche is just amazing. I must emphasize that despite being a thoroughly regular scholar, PRJ didn't belong to nerd kind of people singularly obsessed with non-social pursuit. He took deep interest in the activities of Sanskrit in the Sahitya Sabha, Economic Society, Social Service League and National Service Scheme, IDG, and Students Union Society. In my first year in the college, a batchmate of mine from English department was teased in the university special bus by a group of rowdy students from Dayal Singh College. Our college protested against that criminal act. We blocked the ring road near Mall Road. Today he was just mentioning that event, that incident to the principal. So we were taken into custody and spent a few hours singing songs, eating bananas sent to us by Dr. J.H. Hala, then principal of the college, and cracking jokes in the police station at Model Town just opposite the Alpana Theatre. Ranjan was a part of our group in that journey. So he was pretty involved in all activities of social life of the college. By the virtue of his superb academic accomplishments, PRG commanded tremendous love and respect from all juniors, seniors and his batchmates. Despite that, he always looked like a personified form of humility, nobility, simplicity and politeness. Never threw his weight on others. After graduating from college, PRG did his masters from day school and joined our college on its faculty immediately after that. Taught here for 1 year when he met Professor John Verghese, and he left for US 25 years ago in 1992 to pursue an MPhil in economics. He did his MPhil and PhD from Columbia University, taught there as a teaching assistant and as an adjunct lecturer. Since 1997, he is teaching in the University of California, where he was raised to the rank of professor in 2010. International economics and economic growth and development are two key areas of his specialization. PRJ has been a visiting scholar to University of Tübingen and IFO Institute in Munich in Germany and to Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. He has been on the editorial board of journals like Arthaniti, Economies, Economics Research International, the Open Demography Journal, Journal of International Commerce, Economics and Policy, Journal of Development Economics, Indian Growth and Development Review, etc. He has 30 journal publications, 7 chapters in edited volumes, 1 book review and 1 web publication to his credit. There is an exhaustive long list of PRJ's invited seminar presentations, conference presentations, participation as a discussant and panelist, refereeing, professional affiliation and honors and awards bestowed upon him. I extend a very warm and hearty welcome to Professor Priyaranjan on my personal behalf, on behalf of the principal and on behalf of the entire college community for his acceptance to come to college. Welcome and thank you, Priyaranjan.
Okay, thank you for a very generous introduction, and I have put too much pressure on me. Let's see if I can live up to it. So it's a wonderful feeling to be back in college, and I have memories of this room. I guess we were just reminiscing that we had a freshers debate here and some incidents. I cannot tell publicly that. But remember, we were taking a walk around the college and it was wonderful. Just want to start out by saying that all of you are privileged to have the opportunity to study in this college. I feel privileged to have had the opportunity to study here, and I hope all of you do something good in life. Okay, so without any further ado, let me get to the talk. So the topic is globalization, and I am going to try to make it very non-technical so that even if you do not have an economics background, you can get the point, get most of it. So can we have a show of hands? How many of you are from economics? Oh, most of you are. Okay, that's good. How many of you have taken a course in international trade yet? Okay, so then you will learn something new. So, what do we mean by globalization? You can define globalization as a free movement of 3 things: goods and services, people, and capital. Okay, so goods and services, you trade goods and services, people, immigration, people migrate, and capital. Capital is, I'll be talking about it in more detail later, but when a multinational company comes and invests, sets up a plant in Pune, say General Motors sets up a plant in Pune, that is foreign direct investment, that is movement of capital from the US to India. Similarly, if an Indian bank, say ICICI Bank, buys shares of General Motors in the US, that is a foreign investment by India. It's not foreign direct investment, it's called portfolio investment, but that is also part of capital movement. So in that case, capital is moving from India to the US. So these are three things: movement of goods and services, which is trade, people, immigration, and then capital. I'm going to talk about each of these in turn. So I'm going to spend most of the time on trade in goods and services. So why do countries trade? One question. What do they have to gain from trade? That's another one. So just to give you an idea of how important trade is in today's economy, there's a simple statistics called trade to GDP ratio. So you can calculate it for different countries. GDP, all of you know, right? And our trade to GDP ratio for the world as a whole has gone up from 40% in 1989 to 60% in 2010 or so. So what that means is for every 100 rupees of goods and services production in the world, 60 rupees is exported somewhere. Okay, so 60% of trade to GDP ratio means if the world as a whole produces goods and services worth 100 rupees, 60 rupees of that is traded. So it's huge. Now, why do countries trade? There are two broad theories, main theories of trade, why countries trade. One is a theory of trade based on comparative advantage. That is the traditional theory of trade. And the second one is a trade based on increasing returns to scale. And I'm going to talk about both. So let's talk about the theory of comparative advantage. This theory was propounded by a British economist named David Ricardo in year 1817, exactly 200 years ago. Okay, so I'm talking about it in 2017, and this is one of the greatest insights in all of economics. Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage is one of the greatest insights in all of economics. It's not very easy to explain it without math. I'll just try to give you the key insights. So in Ricardo's original example, there were two countries, England and Portugal. So already know about. Okay, England and Portugal. They both produced two goods, cloth and wine. Okay, and they were produced using a very simple technology. You just needed some labor to produce cloth and wine. Okay, so cloth required some amount of labor, wine required some amount of labor. And if you want to know the numbers, Ricardo assumed that in England, 100 units of labor was required to produce one cloth, and 120 units of labor was required to produce one wine. In Portugal, the numbers were 90 and 80. So in Portugal, 90 units of labor was required to produce one cloth, and 80 units of labor was required to produce one wine. What that means is that Portugal was better at making both cloth and wine. So he deliberately chose these numbers to make one country better than the other in everything. So one country is better at making everything than the other. Okay, so you would think that the country which is worse at making everything would not be able to trade, right? Would have nothing to sell to the rest of the world or to the other country in this case. But Ricardo argued that no, the country that is worse at making both cloth and wine can still compete in one of the two. And that's the idea of comparative advantage. That is, what is important for trade is not whether you are good in absolute terms, but whether you're good in relative terms. That's the idea of comparative advantage. And you can illustrate it using opportunity cost. So given the numbers that I said, it turns out that the opportunity cost of producing cloth is less in England than in Portugal, even though England is worse than Portugal in making both cloth and wine. And that is why England can compete in cloth. And in this two good example, the flip side of that is Portugal will have a comparative advantage in wine. What is the idea of opportunity cost? That is another great thing about economics, this concept of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the cost that can be measured in terms of an alternative usage. So you employ some labor to produce cloth. What is the alternative for that labor? It's to produce wine. Okay, if that labor is not producing cloth, it can produce wine. So the opportunity cost of cloth in England is the amount of wine that could have been produced instead of producing cloth. And so if you do those calculations, what you will find out is that it's relatively cheaper to produce cloth in England because the opportunity cost of producing cloth in England is less. And the opportunity cost of producing wine in Portugal is less. Let me try to explain it using a slightly different example because these numbers may not make sense without looking at it closely. I didn't write the numbers. So suppose you're thinking about a lawyer who is a very good lawyer and is also a very good typist. Okay? So lawyers have to type a lot, right? All the briefs and things need to be typed. So the lawyer is very good at arguing the case in a court, and the lawyer is very good at typing as well. Okay? Now, should the lawyer do all his typing himself? So say the lawyer hires a secretary to do the typing. The lawyer realizes that the secretary types 50 words a minute, so the lawyer can type 100 words a minute. Okay? Should the lawyer fire the secretary and do his own typing? No. Why not? You can see the opportunity cost here. What is the opportunity cost of the lawyer's time? Say the lawyer makes 500 rupees an hour, right? That's his consulting fee. If he argues a case, takes up a case, he can make 500 rupees an hour. If he can pay the secretary 100 rupees an hour, the lawyer would be much better hiring the secretary and letting her do the typing, even though the lawyer is better at doing the typing himself, because the lawyer's comparative advantage is in arguing the case. Okay? Even though the secretary is worse at both arguing the case, she doesn't have a lawyer's license, so she cannot argue the case. So the cost of arguing the case is in a way infinite for her, but she can type, not that good. So say she, instead of typing, if she had done something else, cleaning clothes, whatever, that would define her opportunity cost. So for the lawyer, the opportunity cost of his time is 500, right? That's why he is better off hiring a secretary for 100 rupees an hour. Okay? So that's the idea of comparative advantage. You can be better at everything, but still, given that you have a finite amount of time, you should devote your resources to the thing that you're relatively better at. Okay? So maybe Sachin Tendulkar could have been a better economist than me as well. Okay? He is definitely better at cricket than me, but it's possible that he could have been a better economist. His dad was a professor and he was pretty good at studies also, but his comparative advantage was in cricket. Okay? My comparative advantage is in economics. So that's the idea of comparative advantage. And so, if you have a comparative advantage in something, it makes sense for you to specialize in that good, and then specialize means produce more of that good and then exchange in the world market. So in the Ricardo example, England and Portugal both would be better off if England concentrated its resources on producing cloth and Portugal concentrated its resources on producing wine, and then they exchange it for each other. That way, both would be better off, just as in the lawyer-secretary example, both are better off if the lawyer does arguing the case and secretary does the typing. So that's the idea of comparative advantage. And so another way of seeing this is that from Portugal's point of view, Portugal is getting cloth cheaper by importing it from England than it could produce domestically. It would be more costly for Portugal to produce clothes domestically than to import it from England. And that's where the gain from trade comes. You can get something cheaper from outside. Okay, if you import, that is cheaper, that's why you benefit from it. Okay, so in a way, trade is like a new technology. In a way, it's like a new technology to produce the imported goods. So from England's point of view, trade with Portugal is effectively like a new technology to produce wine. From Portugal's point of view, trade with England is like a new technology to produce cloth. Okay, because Portugal can get a lot more cloth by trading with England than it could get without trading. Okay, so that's the idea, that trade based on comparative advantage is like a new technology. So here is a story that we use in our undergraduate classes. The story appeared in a book by someone named James Ingram to show how trade is similar to a technological progress, and also tells you something about the politics of opposition to trade, but there's not so much opposition to technology or technological progress when they have similar effects. So this story is about say the US. Most of my examples are from the US because that's what we use to teach in class. So there's an entrepreneur. So a story breaks out in some newspaper that there's an entrepreneur who's found a new way to make shirts. Okay, so say currently the shirts are selling for $25 a piece, and this entrepreneur has figured out a new way to produce shirt using say wheat and lumber, whatever, some kind of raw materials. He can produce shirts which sell for $15. Okay, so earlier shirts were selling for $25. Now this entrepreneur has figured out a way to make shirts for $15. New technology, right? He has a machine, he puts some lumber, some wheat, whatever, and shirts come out of that machine, and that costs him just $15. Everyone is like happy, right, to get cheaper shirts, and he's considered to be a hero. Wow, this guy has fancy technology to produce shirts. And later, some investigative reporter finds out that what he is actually doing is exporting wheat and lumber to South Korea and importing shirts from there, and he can do it much cheaper than is produced domestically in the US. Okay, so now he's considered to be a villain for destroying American jobs and killing the occupation of American shirt producers and so on. But the idea of this story is that import, in this example of shirts, is very much like a new technology. Just as a new technology would reduce the cost of producing shirts, imports from Korea would have a very similar effect. Okay, so now in the simple Ricardian theory of comparative advantage, there was only one what is called factor of production. I'm trying to stay away from jargons, but it's very difficult. So factor of production are things, right, that you need to produce. So in the Ricardian example, there's only one factor of production, labor. So labor was the only thing that was needed to produce cloth and wine. And so if there was gain from trade, labor was gaining, and so everyone was gaining. Okay, there were no losers from trade in that example. Even though there could be something that I'm going to talk about later, but say labor is the only factor of production, so no losers from trade. But in more general models of comparative advantage, there's a model called Heckscher-Ohlin model. I'm not going to get into the details, but there are more than one factors of production. Say you want to produce food, you need land and labor, right? You want to produce cloth, you need some kind of machines and labor. So there are more than one factor of production in reality. And in those settings, the idea of comparative advantage still works. That is, one country will have a comparative advantage in one good and the other country in the other good. But now you have different factors of production. You have owners of land, you have owners of capital, you have owners of labor, okay? And now in this kind of more general setting, it's possible for trade to produce winners and losers. In fact, trade will produce winners and losers. So some people will win, some people will lose, okay? However, you can show that overall, the country as a whole gains from trade. What that means is that the gain of the winners is going to be enough to offset the loss of the losers. So you can redistribute among people and potentially make everyone better off. However, there is a possibility of some people losing from trade. And the general idea is that if you work in an industry that competes with imports, then you are more likely to lose. Okay, if you work in an industry which is an exporting industry, you are more likely to gain. That's kind of roughly the idea in more general settings. Because what trade does is it reduces the price of the goods that are imported, and it increases the price of the goods that are exported. So that's why people working in export industries benefit, and people working in import competing industries those people lose. So Ricardo, in fact, was aware of this, even though he didn't write it in a simple model, because Ricardo was opposed to corn laws. Does anyone know about corn laws? So Britain had a restriction on import of corn in early 19th century. And Ricardo was a stockbroker. He was a Jewish stockbroker from London, and his interests were aligned with capital owners in England. And England used to export textile manufacturing, and it used to import a lot of agricultural products. So if England is importing agricultural products, what that means is that free import of agricultural products is going to lower the price of agricultural products in England. And so landowners are going to lose. Okay, so free trade in corn would lead to a decline in the income of landowners in England. And so that's why landowners wanted restriction on agricultural imports, because they were better off if England did not trade in corn. Okay, and Ricardo wanted a repeal of corn laws. And so the model that he highlighted had only one factor of production, and that showed that everyone was gaining from trade. So that was a political move on his part. Okay, in his later writings, you do find the story about trade producing winners and losers, but the one that he highlighted was one where there was only one factor of production, and so everyone was gaining. And so I've told you two different versions of the comparative advantage. One is which had only one factor of production, so everyone gained, and the second version had multiple factors of production, so trade produced winners and losers. And in that kind of setting, it's possible for trade to increase inequality in a society. So that is one of the concerns with globalization, that globalization increases inequality. So that is a possibility in trade theory, and then later when I'm going to talk about empirical evidence, we'll see there is empirical evidence of increase in inequality. So that is one kind of negative side of trade. Another one is something that I glossed over while talking about it, and that is trade. In order for the gains from trade to be realized, factors of production should be able to freely move. There should not be any cost associated with the movement of factors of production. So in the original Ricardo example, what would happen is that the cloth industry in Portugal would be decimated, because Portugal will start producing a lot of wine, and in the extreme Ricardo example, Portugal will just produce wine and England will just produce cloth. So wine industry is going to be decimated in England, and cloth industry is going to be decimated in Portugal. Now, in order for everyone to gain from trade, the workers working in cloth production in Portugal should be able to freely move to wine production, and the workers working in wine production in England should be able to freely move to cloth production. Okay? If that happens, then everyone gains. But if these workers have specialized skills, or if they have a mobility cost, they have a home in London and now they need to move to some other place, then that is going to be costly. So there are all those costs associated with it, and because of that, in the short run, you could see